And this Friday night, there are three major stories we are following. Israel seems on the brink of an all-out war against Hamas. At this hour, tanks and troops appear to be preparing for a ground war. And here stateside, Republicans met at the White House today to avert the so-called fiscal cliff. Now, we have full reports coming up. But first, earlier today, General David Petraeus testified that the CIA talking points meant for UN Ambassador Susan Rice's appearance on 5 Sunday news shows originally contained the information that there was evidence of al-Qaeda's elements involved in this attack. But it appears as if those talking points were then altered by the White House or somebody close to the White House to remove any reference to al-Qaeda's involvement in the attacks. Now, we've yet to discover who altered the talking points in a way that would, A, reflect more favorably on the Obama administration, and B, mislead you, the American people, in the process by falsely blaming the September 11th anniversary attacks on spontaneous protests over an anti-Islamic video. No one knows exactly yet who came up with the final version of these talking points. Now, Congressman Pete King said that one source told Fox News that Petraeus, quote, has no idea what was provided to Rice or who was the author of the talking points that she used, that he had no idea that she was going on the talk shows until the White House announced it 1 or 2 days before. Now, the looming question is, in this cover-up, who did it? Now, earlier, Fox's own Catherine Herridge explained where the talking points went once they left the CIA. Watch this.
What we're told about these talking points is that it went through an interagency review. That would include the Department of Justice, the State Department, other intelligence agencies, and that at the end of the day, you have this final document.
Now, General Petraeus' explosive testimony challenges the White House's stance on what happened from the very beginning, and it contradicts UN Ambassador Susan Rice, who 5 days after the attack made the rounds on all 5 Sunday talk shows. And remember, she was pushing the position that violence was in reaction to a YouTube video. Of course, what makes this scandal potentially historic in its reach and effect is the role of the president in all of this. Now, every day, as more evidence comes out, it is becoming more and more clear that Barack Obama had to know that there was mounting evidence that al-Qaeda was involved in this attack and that the anti-Islamic video had nothing to do with the murder of Ambassador Stevens and 3 others long before Obama continued to point blame at that 13-minute YouTube video. Now, think about it this way. If Obama's CIA director knew almost instantaneously that an al-Qaeda-affiliated group was responsible for the attack, if within 24 hours of the attack, the CIA station chief in Libya reported to Washington that there were eyewitness reports that the attack was carried out by militants, and if email shows that the officials at the White House and State Department were advised 2 hours after the attack that an Islamic militant group, Ansar al-Sharia, had claimed credit for them, and if the State Department is now saying they never believed that this attack on the 11th of September against the U.S. consulate was a film protest gone awry, think about it. Then it's nearly impossible to believe that President Obama didn't know. Oh, and did I mention the State Department was watching this unfold in real time? And when President Obama, in his absurd press conference, then tried to portray himself as coming to the defense of a damsel in distress, that being Susan Rice, he said, quote, Republicans should come after me. Now, at that moment, he stumbled into a deeper and more damaging truth than he ever realized. Because Republicans are rightly going after you, Mr. President, because the evidence is mounting that you and your administration knowingly and willfully misled the American people on the Benghazi massacre, and lying to the American people, perhaps in order to get reelected. That is a serious offense. Joining me now with reaction, Texas Congressman Mike Conaway is with us. He was in today's closed-door meeting with General Petraeus and the author of the brand-new book, Heroes Proved, which is out next week, host of War Stories, Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North. Gentlemen, welcome to Hannity.
Good to be with you, Sean.
Thanks, Sean. Good to be with you.
All right, Congressman, bring us inside the room. What happened today?
Well, General Petraeus came to clarify some of the statements that he made in the September 14th briefing. But first, Con, let me make sure that we acknowledge the heroic activities that went on that night with our security forces. They saved lives. They put themselves at risk. And we need to acknowledge that, the work that went on that night during the attack. General Petraeus came to us this morning in a very straightforward manner, laid out a timeline as to how the assessments that the CIA was making, the intelligence community was making, shifted over time. And it's pretty clear today that the administration kept up a line of logic that the the attack on the temporary mission in Benghazi grew out of that protest. They knew long after they knew that wasn't the case. They maintained that fiction for a lot longer than they should have, and there now lies the next questions that have to get asked, and that is why and who did it. It's clear that the CIA and the Intelligence Committee was giving them the right information at the right time with the right reasons, and whether the president simply wasn't taking the briefings in the morning the way he's supposed to or ignored them, that has to be discovered.
All right, Colonel North, it appears what the General Petraeus is saying here, they altered the talking points, and what they did is it was done by somebody in the White House, somebody close to the White House.
Oh. Well, or someone in the administration, somewhere between General Petraeus and the CIA, and where they finally ended up being broadcast by Ambassador Rice. Here's what's really important and strange. We now know the timeline in which the talking points were altered. We know that they were originally correct. What we don't know is what the administration did before, during, and after this event that would have in any way altered the outcome. In other words, going all the way back months to the original messages coming in, what was done, who didn't do it, that may have saved the lives of 4 Americans and a diplomatic mission. And what you've now got, Sean, is because of Benghazi, you have all over the world radical Islamists saying America is weak, America is in disarray, America can be driven away. And they've got proof because they've got the buildings burning up on all of their websites.
Congressman, is it possible, is it plausible in any way that Susan Rice 5 days after, now that what you have learned at this point, is it possible the White House didn't know? Is it possible the president didn't know this was a terror attack 2 weeks later? He was asked twice, 2 separate interviews, and we know the speech that he gave before the United Nations. Is it plausible to you?
It's plausible that perhaps Susan Rice didn't know on Sunday. There was obviously the talking points went up, having the right information in it. There was some shifting on that, and so she was giving information that that she then parroted out on those Sunday morning talk shows. You would hope, though, someone in her position would have enough professional skepticism that, given all the open source reporting that was going on during that time frame, that she would have at least tried to question some of the things that she was told. Yeah. Clearly, 2 weeks later, when the president is continuing this fiction, he knew or should have known that was not out of the protest. In fact, there was no protest at all in front of that embassy, right. And that he should have known better.
Now, you were in the committee hearing meetings. There were videos of this. You had the drone video, and then you had the video that you were able to get from inside the compound itself. Can you tell us what was in those videos?
Well, I'm not sure I'm supposed to tell you exactly those kind of things, but it's clear from the evidence, the entire body of evidence, that there was no protest at the embassy or at the temporary facility, and that there was a lot of activity going on, but it wasn't protests, it wasn't demonstrations. It was a terrorist attack that should have been labeled as a terrorist attack from the very start. And Sean, as you know, these people hate us, and to try to morph this into something that it wasn't we need to ask the president why he did that. What was his intent for doing that? All
right, Colonel North, then that raises the question. If the State Department's watching in real time, General Petraeus knew almost instantaneously what this was. I ask you, is it possible, is it plausible the President of the United States, who met an hour and 18 minutes after the attack began with one of his generals and with Secretary of Defense Panetta, is it possible 2 weeks later he didn't know?
Yes, because incompetence, malevolence, and misfeasance have been boundless in this administration. And it's entirely possible that this president has not been paying attention to the national security briefing.
I can't believe that, Colonel. That's implausible to me.
Please. I worked for a president who every morning at 8 o'clock he got a briefing. It took him a total of 45 minutes to make a decision to take down the aircraft that was escaping with the terrorists who'd hijacked the Achille Lauro. I know what it's like to work for a president who pays attention. That's not happened in this administration, Sean. And if it were happening, this event would not have transpired as it did. The cover-up would have been unnecessary, and you might well have saved 4 American lives and a diplomatic mission. All of that that's happening right now in that part of the world is the direct consequence of that ineptness, incompetence, malevolence, and misfeasance.
All right, guys, thank you both for being with us. We appreciate it.